Welcome to the Glazier Nation podcast. My guest this week is Paul Paris. With an accomplished career as a glazer, Paul was chosen to run the exterior glazing package for the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. You might know it as the Guitar Hotel. Paul shared some strategies he implemented to help make his team successful, some lessons he learned along the way, and advice for anybody coming up as a glazer. This podcast is brought to you by Glazier Nation. You can check out Glazier Nation and all their offerings at glazernation.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the awards section to vote for the 2023 Glazer of the Year. Thanks for checking us out. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Are you still in Ohio, was it?
I'm in Kentucky.
Kentucky. Were you in Ohio last time I talked to you?
I was in Ohio last week. Yeah, we had a business unit meeting that talks about our current project, like our current work and our upcoming work, contracts that won, upcoming contracts that we're bidding for. So it's pretty neat, dude. You know what I mean? Because now that I've jumped over to the general contractor side, I'm learning like so much more, you know what I mean? But I use my glazing background and all the scopes that it entails with what I've done, from installing to managing the projects. My eye for detail comes in.
Well, that's a great question. If you don't mind me asking, what would you say is the biggest difference being on the general contractor side now versus the glazing subcontractor side? What's the number one thing that's kind of opened your eyes in terms of different?
Managing more scopes.
Yeah.
And scheduling them sequentially, properly.
Yeah.
Understanding that because, working with multiple subcontractors over the years, you see how they kind of put you on top of each other, and it's not their fault, because sometimes scheduling just happens that way. You lose days, so you kind of need to gain some time, and that's the only way you're going to do it, because I'm dealing with it right now. I got this visual mock-up going on, and dealing with the weather, the cold, the ice, the rain, submittal process. It could put a big hindrance on your daily activities.
Sure.
So sometimes you just need to dance around it. I like to call it a beautifully choreographed ballet at work, if you will, with a bunch of jackhammer noises and pushing some concrete and shit.
Yeah, maybe a more hardcore version of that, more like a mosh pit, maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, man. But it's been great. You know what I mean? Thankfully, I got some great team members and some people who kind of understand where I come from. So, they're encouraging and they get it.
Cool.
And then, being on multiple projects, you gather what goes before you. Oh, I need the waterproofing done before I get there. Oh, I need the CMU wall built before I get there.
I might want to ask you more about that, but since this is the Glazier Nation podcast, let's hop into what got you into the glazing industry. How did you find yourself in the glazing industry?
I had gotten in some trouble some years ago, and after I suffered the consequences, one of my buddies had stopped by my house to see how I was doing and make sure I was living life all right. And he happened to be in the operator engineers union. So I had told him, hey, let me know when your boss has openings, so I can get in. And I was like, operator engineer? Shoot, they make great money. And so that day goes on, we finish talking about everything, catching up. And then the next day he calls me and says, hey, my neighbor's company needs apprentices. Are you interested? I was like, yeah, because I didn't want to go back to the lifestyle I was living prior to that. And so I went and met him, told him my story. And he's like, you know what, man? I'm going to help you out. You don't have to worry about a ride. You just show up to my house every day, and I'll take you to work with me. So I ended up getting in the Glazers union. And So it's pretty nice, because people were like, oh, the union's good. So I was like, all right, I did it. And so I was going through the apprenticeship, and every class that they offered, whether it was welding, an extra safety class, boom lift, scissor lift training, I just jumped on it to make sure I didn't fall back into the same old patterns. So it's pretty nice to give a shout out to Ed Flamino, if he ever does catch this, for helping me get in the community. And it's been a nice ride.
So you kind of had an opportunity, and with that opportunity, you were able to kind of gain control of your life. Let's say, what would you say is kind of the biggest lesson you learned through that transformation? Maybe someone else could use to apply to their life.
I took advantage of the opportunities that were in front of me, and I didn't hold anything back.
I think a lot of people might not take those opportunities. So, I mean, as simple as that sounds, I think that's great advice. If you're given an opportunity, you got to take it, right?
Yeah. And I ran with it. That was the biggest thing. I did the apprenticeship program, which usually takes you 4 years roughly. The apprenticeship coordinator, I actually finished it in 3 because of all the classes I did, and just getting a good jump on the courses that were in front of me. So even as an apprentice, I was kind of noticed, if you would say, by one of the foremen.
Yeah.
He noticed that I had the eye to detail. So it helped me to climb the ladder, so to speak.
Sure.
And 2 years into the trade, I was already running a crew of journeymen, and I was like a 65% apprentice.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
I mean, the people that I work with on a daily, weekly basis, it's, if you can find someone that is willing to work and willing to grind and willing to apply themselves, I mean, there are opportunities out there. You kind of just have to take them, and you got to work hard. Nothing's handed, right?
no, nothing's handed.
So main reason we hooked up here was to talk about the Hard Rock. Anyone in the glazing industry has seen this beautiful building. Looks like a guitar. We'll probably throw some pictures or video in this podcast at some point. But prior to that project, you had worked on some other tower projects. What were those projects?
I had worked on the one hotel in South Beach. Well, prior to the Hard Rock, I was working in California. That's where I was in the union. And then I had moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I was involved with, it's called Mansions at Aquilina.
Got
the Jade Signature and Sunny Isles. I assisted in some water tests at the Porsche Design Tower. What else? One hotel in South Beach. I did Margaritaville in Hollywood Beach, Florida.
So on those projects specifically, were they all towers, or just some of those were towers?
4 of them were towers.
Okay.
A couple of them were like 13-story buildings. They're still pretty big.
Yeah. I mean, 13 stories is still a big building, man.
Yeah.
On those projects, what lessons did you learn that you were able to apply when you got onto the Hard Rock?
Paying attention to detail.
Okay.
I had one guy, when I had started to really climb the ladder, he was my first foreman when I fresh apprentice. And he said, the devil's in the details. And
Sure.
That was one of the things that we had to really pay attention to at the Hard Rock. From the first few panels all the way up, because of the curvature of the building,
Yeah.
there was a lot of caulking details that needed to be done right. And so we really had to pay attention to that. And, I've used that to this day, is to make sure those caulking details are correct. I know a lot of guys can say, oh, just caulk it. That's
Yeah.
not always the answer, because the systems need to breathe. And I learned that
Right.
in Florida, especially with the hurricanes and the vacuum pressures, is you can't just seal it up. You have to pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Glazier fails a water test. Knee-jerk reaction is, just seal everything. And, that's going to work today. That's probably going to work tomorrow. But 3-4 years down the road, it may not be working the way you intended. And that's not a good long-term solution. What, paying attention to the details, do you have any specific strategies that maybe you teach your team? Yeah, or are there certain things that you need to look for that maybe not everybody does?
The transitions. When I first moved to Miami, they sent me to Texas to go take care of some water leaks. And then in between Texas and Miami, I spent a lot of time at the test facilities. And it taught me to look for the holes.
Sure.
Especially when we're failing water tests at the laboratories.
Sure.
You hope things were going right. And I can't always blame the engineers, but it taught me to look for the anomalies that are continuous. Your little joints, that little popping detail at your corners. If you didn't backfeed your glass, you might not have tooled it right or cleaned it right at your subsill. So it taught me to look at all those places.
It's amazing how such minuscule details can affect the performance of a glazing system. When you're pulling 8, 10, 12 pounds on a chamber test, if your sealant is off, by a tiny little bit, you can fail a test. It's pretty wild. So I think that's great advice, paying attention to the details. The first time you saw a rendering or an elevation, whatever the first thing you saw of the Hard Rock, what was your impression?
I was pretty amazed because I didn't know that I would actually be on it. I was working for one company in Miami, and they would always talk about, we got the Hard Rock, but they had the interior package. Then I was working on a 60-story in Sunny Isles, and then my buddy said, "Hey, you need to come over here. I'm going to have the owner call you." So the owner called me, and we talked, and I interviewed, and it wasn't necessarily about the Hard Rock. It was about another job in California. So we talked. He's like, "Hey, we'll call you in a month." 2 weeks later, he calls me and says, "Hey, plans changed. Can you run the Hard Rock?" And I was like, "Yeah." So that's when I ended up running the actual glazing package of the guitar tower. And I remember driving by it, and little voice in my head said, "You're not ready for this." I'm driving down to South Beach.
Yeah.
And then so I prayed myself, and so I talked to God and asked him to guide me. And so I go do my business, and then when I come back, I'm driving back up, passing the Hard Rock, and this voice told me, "I would have put you there if you weren't ready." So to be on it and see it, it's a superstructure, and it was pretty amazing. I remember my first couple days in the shop during onboarding for this company. My brain hurt because of the engineering. Not that it was overbearing.
Yeah.
You start seeing the curvature and how they have custom made hooks for the brackets, and each floor has a different degree, so you can't switch them up like you can on a regular flat face curtain wall.
Sure.
Just the different rakes had, the way it's milled out. So that was pretty intense for me.
So maybe a level of feeling overwhelmed, but also excited to work on maybe kind of a cool, monumental looking project.
Definitely overwhelmed. Monumental project by far. I got to say, honestly, with the projects I've done, this was the one that really put, Paul Paris on the map.
The project itself, can you give us some stats? How many panels or how many square feet of glass?
Overall square foot of glass was 250,000. There was 5,520 panels total, including the guitar strings,
Okay.
which was it was intense because we had to coordinate with the lighting company in our spandrel. We call it the panel band, but in your spandrel line, there was a integrated lighting system with LED lights that we had to coordinate every single panel for them to connect.
And that's the guitar strings?
In the guitar strings also.
Okay.
In the guitar string, in the face of it, it had like a recess. It had like a 3-inch wide by 2-inch deep cavity where they put, I guess you would call it like a type of a pressure bar
Sure.
type of thing, just to make people understand. And it had the lights and they had to connect it. But in your horizontal lines, when you see the videos, you see those horizontal lines and it's all tied into that panel band. And it went all the way around the building. We had to coordinate with them on our offsite lot. We had to use some fancy silicone because they couldn't fasten it through the glass.
So it's sealed to it?
It's sealed too. Yeah, they used Dow 121.
Yeah. So how long were you and your crew on that project?
I was there from April of 2018, and then I believe the crew finally left in February of 2020.
Okay. So you actually bridged some of the COVID stuff then too.
They did it right before COVID. They finished it right before Super Bowl.
Okay. That's very convenient.
Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously though, like a week before.
Yeah.
A week before they finished.
That's actually exceptional timing because that would have slowed out, I guess topping out that building and finishing up. So that's great.
That would have been really, really crazy and sad for them all at the same time.
For sure.
From the day we set the first panel was June 5th, 2018. And then the day we set the last panel was June 5th, 2019.
Okay. What, if any, strategies did you implement to help your team be successful on that project?
I had some really great installers to where they kind of made my life easy and difficult at some days.
Sure.
Because what I had to do was clear their path.
Okay.
If they had panels laid out and the weather agreed with us, being in South Florida, they did great. I think our best day was like 52 panels or 54 panels.
Okay. How many guys did you have out there?
I think the most we had was like 17.
Okay. It's a lot of panels.
Yeah.
So you specifically clearing the way, was there strategies you had to implement maybe with the GC team or with other trades to help your guys be successful?
Well, we had we had a platform down on the ground, so it allowed for us to lay out our panels. Sometimes we'd have to deal with heavy equipment blocking our way for panel distribution on that platform. But for the most part, the GC was on our side as far as helping us to make sure we were able to go because of the tight schedule that we had to do, that we had to accommodate to get this thing done, because interiors were going before even glass panels were going up. They actually had paid some big money for this shrink wrap type of plastic that covers boats. So they were working on interiors, and that I guess that would be probably one of the difficult things is they had walls, and the way they built that chamber, it was 4 feet back, so it we had to cut the plastic and accommodate that. So I was getting yelled at a lot, like, why'd you cut the plastic? Because then all summer long in Florida, it rains.
Yeah. Yeah. 4 o'clock every day, right on time.
Every day, right on time.
Wait,
Listen,
so all right, let me understand that. You've got your floor slabs and you're able to hang panels from the outside, but they're proceeding with interiors because they have this shrink wrap up.
yes,
Okay. So
hurricane rated shrink wrap.
wow. So you're bringing your panels to the floor slab, and in certain areas you have to cut that shrink wrap to chamber test or to install or what?
Just to install.
Okay. And they didn't like that.
No, not when the rain came.
Yeah.
It would just pour down the floors.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got your interiors going, I can see how that's a problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of the biggest things I think we learned as a complete team, as far as the glass and the general contractor, is to be more aware of the shear walls.
Okay.
When it would rain, water would capture behind that shear wall and just go straight down.
Okay.
Um,
How did you guys resolve that?
Lots of dryers,
Yeah.
lots of dryers.
You mentioned it yourself with that building that kind of put you on the map, and the glazing industry kind of knows about you. And I mean, that's a big reason why we're having this interview, and we're going to publish on, glazernation.com and YouTube and all that good stuff. So another glazer that's maybe listening to this wants to advance their career. What's your advice for that person?
I think one of the things that worked for me was I moved out of where I started my career, and I took my knowledge to Florida, and it opened doors. With the experience that I had in Florida, the level or the title they gave me right away. From being a leadman and a foreman in California, they gave me a superintendent title right away because of my knowledge. And then the company that I worked for prior to the company that did the Hard Rock, I had met the guy at the test facilities. And when I went and interviewed with him, he had asked me, he had told me, oh, you want to be a superintendent? He's like, well, we don't need a superintendent. He's like, I need a project manager. Can you do it? And the first company that I worked for in Florida, I had a buddy who had this quote by Richard Branson. If somebody offers you an amazing opportunity and you're not sure if you can do it, say yes and learn along the way.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say that I said yes and that I learned along the way. And it was just taking that chance and using the knowledge that I had gained over the years to kind of push me higher and higher up the ladder, if you will.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll get a question or a direct message on like Facebook or LinkedIn, and somebody say, how did you move up the ladder? I guess I took a chance and I just kept pushing.
Yeah.
I tell people, aim for the stars. Just aim for the stars. Even if you don't think it's attainable, just aim for the stars.
Yeah, I love it, man. Get in the door and then figure it out.
Yeah.
And if you figure it out, you're going to have success, and you're going to learn as you go, and you're going to grow. And if you don't figure it out, you're still going to learn something.
Yeah.
And you're going to get another chance somewhere else.
You're going to be fine no matter what. When that opportunity is right there, and I'm always encouraging guys that I know to move up, learn the software. I think the software is some of the biggest things to climbing the ladder. I know, a lot of guys are happy getting their hands dirty, and I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, even with the title.
Yeah.
I always tell people, even a lot of those pictures that you could see in when I was on the Hard Rock, I wore a white button-up shirt or a dress shirt.
Yeah.
Just so you knew that I was, in charge. And I used to tell people, hey, don't be fooled by the shirt. I'll cut the sleeve off to clean some caulking toolers.
Right.
The shirt doesn't mean shit. It just lets you know that I'm the one in charge.
Yeah.
And not even to be, I don't like to beat my chest. No, I like to, consider myself humble, but I'll get in there with the guys. And then it's crazy because the guy's like, get out of the way, Paul. You're not supposed to be doing this. Get out of the way. And I'm like, bro, like, I want to have some fun. I missed it too, It's like,
Sure.
I remember coming up as an apprentice, and I used to tell people, how come you don't run work? And I remember some guys say, I just want to do my 8 and go home, or my 10 and go home. And, when people, after I finished the Hard Rock and I went out to California, some, a lot of the union guys that I knew, hey, how'd you get your job? Number one, I worked my freaking ass off.
Yeah.
And I go, when you guys leave after 8 or 10, my brain doesn't shut off. I'm a workaholic.
Well, that's definitely another component of it. It's, it's not just take the opportunity and things happen. You have to take the opportunity and then work hard. And, maybe there's a generational thing, but, my kids, I'm very clear with them that, yes, you can do whatever you want, but if you want something, no one will hand it to you. You need to work towards that goal, and you need to work hard, and you need to make sacrifices to get there. One thing you said in there, the learning the software, and there's always going to be guys that don't want to do it, or they, like you said, they want to work their 8 and go home. But if you are a young glazer, or pretty much probably any trade, I can't speak too much to the other ones. My whole life's been in glass, but if you're not embracing technology, you're going to be outpaced by those that are. And that's still people that are working in the field that are going to get their hands dirty. There's technology that they're using, whether it's software to communicate with the shop, to communicate with the GC, or whether it's tools out in the field to be able to lift and manipulate glass and frames. So if you're not at least aware of that and looking at it as opportunities, that's a common theme that I talk about on this podcast and my content is that stuff is real, and not just our trade, not even just construction, everywhere. If you're a young person and you're not embracing that stuff, you will be left behind.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I tell foremen that I work with. Learn the software. If you want to get to that superintendent role, because now I don't delegate manpower. I haven't delegated manpower at least 8 years. And I've had some opportunities where I've had to. But I was training my brother, we'll say. I mean, it's true, but I don't want to say it. And he was telling me, you're not training right. And I had to tell him, I said, you know what, let me tell you something. I have $250 million worth of successful projects under my belt. I think I know a thing or two about running a day-to-day operations of projects. But delegating manpower, it's something I haven't done in a while. So I try to encourage guys, learn the software, whatever it is, whether it's Procore, Bluebeam. Bluebeam is a major one, BIM 360.
Yeah.
All those ones, it sets you apart from just understanding how things come together.
Absolutely. And just the speed of all that stuff too is, look at where our industry was 5-10 years ago, and then try to think of where it's going to be in 5-10 years from now. And I just think, like you said, people are going to separate themselves. Those that, even if you're not a master of it, you got to be aware of it. You got to know maybe how to mess with it a little bit. You can't just push it aside and say, I want to work with my hands. I think you're just going to be left behind.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to keep up with the times, man. And it's crazy because when I had left California in 2012, I never seen a glass manipulator.
Yeah, sure.
I never seen a spider crane. We didn't have those. We had our backs. That's what we had. And, I had some old timers. I had some guys, 30 plus years of experience who saw something in me and taught me how to lay out a radius curtain wall. They taught me, elevations and decimal points. And so when I seen it, especially like on Glazier Nation, that was where I first seen the smart lift.
Yeah.
Man, I was blown away. I was like, man, we don't have to hurt ourselves anymore. That's pretty good.
Yeah, the general health of the glass and glazing industry spines are going to be substantially better going forward.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys my age who are in bad shape. You know, the good Glazier, what do you call it? Disability is the rotator cuff, or however that's said. Rotator cuff, bad knees, bad back.
Yeah.
I was always taught, take care of your knees, take care of your back. Now I'm just overweight. From
Well, Paul, hey man, the Hard Rock is just an absolutely gorgeous project. Congratulations on that. And hey man, I had a blast chatting with you.
Thank you, John.
All right, you have a great night, all right?
All right, you too.